are not engaging your brain. There is definitely something to this, and I think people need to consider it. Look, people are going about their business right now. They're going to work.
And you
What?
think the Fed is pushing the idea of war to force people into the debt market so we can have more debt. Is that what you're saying?
I think that the goal here of the Federal Reserve, who is the real government, okay, doesn't matter who's sitting in the White House, the military is the enforcement arm of the Federal Reserve, will do anything that they need to do to keep power. They don't care how much blood they have to spill. They don't care how much people are going to suffer. Let me just say this real quick. Talk about people suffering and what the Federal Reserve has done. Does anybody remember all the toxic assets that the Federal Reserve scooped off of the Wall Street banks' balance sheets to make the banks continue to function while people were getting thrown into the street, Greg, while people were losing everything? Some of my very best friends lost everything. Now, you want to talk about an institution that is criminal to the core? This is what they did, Greg. People, pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, okay? So the Federal Reserve, by artificially suppressing interest rates, not allowing the market to dictate fair value for debt, again, has created distortions across every single asset class, every one of them. They have reinflated a housing bubble. So now those toxic assets, those mortgage-backed securities are now worth something. And now they're going to sell these at a profit. Those profits should be going to those poor people that were kicked out of their houses, lost everything. No. That's not going to happen here, people. The Federal Reserve deliberately has created bubbles to save themselves. Okay, this is what they have done. If the Federal Reserve would have allowed the market to do its own one and only job, that is to determine fair value, we'd be out of the woods right now. We wouldn't be facing another war right now. They refuse to do this. The free market has been stolen. The free market has been taken away by runaway central banks. And people are not angry about this. People don't know what. Most people cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. This is the reason why they're not angry about it. They don't see what's right in front of their face, so they refuse to. But it makes me very angry to see these types of things happen here. And I'm telling you, mark my words, everyone, it's very suspicious what the Federal Reserve is doing right now. People need to start waking up that we really could be on the threshold of a major event which would force people into the debt market, huge amounts of cash coming out of the stock market because of all this fear, a massive amount of cash going into suppressed assets, gold and silver, housing under massive amounts of pressure. And we could be staring at the next real Great Depression.
Gregory Mannarino, I don't have anything else for that, buddy. You just left it right out on the floor, buddy. Greg squared, and the biggest part of the square was you, buddy. It was a great time for you to come on and give your thing. And before I coach, so people are like, well, he trades stocks and he's a trader and he's in the paper market. And you sweep all your money out. You trade, your shorts, your longs, whatever you do, which I'm suck at. It's like gambling, so I suck at it. But you actually take your money and you are constantly converting it into physical assets, paying off your house, or you're buying gold, you're buying silver, buying stuff like that. Is that what you're doing? So people understand when I'm pumping traderschoice.net, which is totally free, incidentally. Is that what you're doing? Explain what you're doing to people.
This is all I do. This is my sole job. I trade the markets. That's all I do. So with that, I have to support myself. With that, I do convert into hard assets. I've been doing this for years upon years. I will continue to do this. I even own Bitcoin now, Greg. I've decided to divert into some of that too. Look, you have to look for alternative currencies. The current situation is dire, like I outlined, and I know I got a little bit bent out of shape over there, but this is a serious issue, and people need to understand what may unfold, not what will, but what may unfold. We need to look at every scenario here. You can't just sit back in la la land like they want you to do, okay? Start to think outside the box. That's my advice.
And so you're saying the best play is to get yourself out of paper, pay your house off, get your car titled, buy some tires, buy food, buy gold, buy silver if you can. You're buying Bitcoin.
I don't have a big position in Bitcoin. I don't have a large, but I do have some.
Okay, so you do have. So you're spread out across the entire spectrum of of alternative assets and physical assets and things like that. And you would tell other people to, and some people would say, well, it peaked and gold was at $1,900 in 2011, and what they did to keep this going. According to Paul Craig Roberts, PhD in economics and former assistant Treasury Secretary, said that what they did was criminal. They asked the Federal Reserve why they have a trading desk. And you're saying that things are going to get really, really distorted here, and especially with gold and silver. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, but let's take this a step further. Why do derivatives of gold and silver exist? Why is the paper market there? Okay, Greg, it's so they can do whatever they want with it. Look, last Friday, we had a major sell-off with regard to silver. Some entity out there dumped a huge amount of paper onto the market using a market order, something that would never be done unless someone was actually trying to deliberately scare people or get them out of the market. We're going to see more of this. It happens all the time. I almost never trade the derivatives of SLV and GLD for that reason. Look, let me put another perspective on this so people can understand. When we're talking about the paper derivative here of gold and silver, they're not real. There's no price discovery mechanism behind it at all. It's absolute fakery. It's completely false. So understand.
And the actual metal is completely real.
The actual metal is real, and we should be thanking our lucky stars that it is linked, that the price action is linked to the price action of the paper derivative. Because if it were not, the prices of the assets the real asset based in dollars, US dollars right now, would be multiples of what it is now. So these paper markets are existing only so they can play with it. Look, they are pulling the strings, Greg. We're just sitting here, unfortunately, about to grease the wheels of this war machine with our blood, with our guts. Your children are going to be going into fight another war here, a war that is being propagated by the Federal Reserve and other world central banks, because this is what they always do. When they need to boost the economy, bam, let's have another war. This is all going to come together, Greg, at the same time. We're existing in multiple bubbles, both to the top and inverse bubbles. All of this is going to correct at the same time. And what can trigger all this, or what they may feel they're going to allow to happen here, is another major war. And that bond market is warning us of something. And whether it happens or not, we need to start listening. Listen now.
And you say the inverse bubble, gold and silver is the inverse. In other words, it's tiny,
big time.
It should be blowing up, and it's being,
Look,
crushed.
the global debt problem, how we started off with, is going to get monumentally worse. Let's see anyone argue that. Does anyone here who's listening to my voice believe that the global debt problem is going to get better? That should tell you what you need to do. I mean, it's the most easy equation in the face of the earth. It's like adding 2 plus 2. I'm not asking you to define the quadratic equation here. I'm asking you to figure out what 2 plus 2 equals. So this should be so simple for people to understand what they need to do. And they should have been doing this for a long time. And I think if these geopolitical events continue to play out, and that bond market is telling us that something may happen, what's wrong with just taking a little bit of these fiat dollars that you have, convert these things into real assets to protect your wealth? Look, you can choose to hold whatever you want. You want to hold those pieces of paper with numbers printed on them, backed by nothing. These are unbacked liabilities being dispersed by bankrupt governments. You want to hold that. Good for you, because I can promise you, whoever you may be, I will be taking the opposite side of that trade, and I will win over time. No doubt about it.
Gregory Mannarino, the sole proprietor of TradersChoice.net. That's all you do. Your entire site is free. So thank you very much for coming on USAWatchdog.com. That was better than I thought it was going to be. Good, because I was excited, but that was better than I thought it was going to be. You killed it, buddy. You left it all out on the floor. Thank you for joining us today, Gregory Mannarino of TradersChoice.net. Thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks, Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up for Friday, June 30th, 2017, the WNW 290. I want to talk to you about the sad state of the propaganda media in America. I actually had somebody write me and say, well, how do you know this didn't happen at CNN when you were there? I worked at CNN as an investigative correspondent from '06 to mid-'08 for about 2.5 years. I said, it didn't happen while I was there because I was in charge of the ideas and in charge of my own unit. It didn't happen. Nothing like it is today. And the reason why I bring that up is that here we have this retraction CNN did with 3 resigned from CNN after Russia story retraction. This is about a guy named Anthony Scaramucci, who's a friend and a consultant possibly for the president, also certainly a good friend of Donald Trump Jr. This was a story that could have embarrassed the president. And basically, in my opinion, they alluded that he was committing treason by colluding with the Russians. Scaramucci reportedly had a $100 million lawsuit was going to put up against CNN. And consequently, while CNN's trying to get bought out or merge with AT&T, wow, they retracted the story. And you know what? They fired the wrong people. Well, resigned. But they fired the wrong people. The highest person there was the head of the unit. And, I guess evidently it looked like they produced stories for other talent at CNN. I was the head of my unit. I was the investigative reporter. If I was saying it, the buck stopped on my desk. I came up with most, not all, but most of the ideas because I wanted to send the ideas upstairs and I wanted them to be ideas that I could do, that I know that were real ideas. And all those ideas had research and work to them. Before you got green-lighted to, hire crews and take crews on the road and rent rental cars and have airline tickets and fly around the country and build your story, you had to have a pretty good idea of what the story was going to be. And that all happened in the approval process. There is no way these three people stuck this story on the air. And one of them, the head of the union, was out at IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editors Conference. They just stuck whatever they wanted on the air. When I was there were 3 pillars. There was the journalism review pillar, and that was done by out of Atlanta, and that was a high-ranking executive, not somebody that did noun-verb agreement. There was legal, and on a story like this, that those 2 people and standards, those 3 pillars would have been in on this story before they ever wrote this story. So the idea that these people just stuck this story on CNN.com, preposterous. The head of legal should go. The head of CNN.com should be fired. The head of the journalism review that reviewed this script should be fired. The head of standards that was in on this, or should have been in on this, should be fired. And Jeff Zucker, the president of CNN, who's responsible for this kind of environment at CNN, which is absolutely crazy and not the environment that was there when I was there. Even when George Bush was in the White House, that was not the environment that was at CNN. We're going to get George Bush at all costs. Was there people that leaned left? Sure. Not like this. And I actually heard the wackadoodles on CNN talk about they're protecting their sources. I couldn't use an anonymous source. An investigation? That's what we're talking about here. The threshold for me using an anonymous source was through the roof. I never did. I mean, it would have to be something like 1 million people were going to die, and there's this doctor at the CDC that's going to release this study that's going to save 1 million people, but he can't give his name because he's afraid somebody may kill him. I mean, that never happened, but I never used an anonymous source. I couldn't do it. They were like, "You're kidding me? No way." I mean, think about the New York Times with the story with, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, where the New York Times did a story about what Comey's friend at the law school, is an anonymous source to the New York Times that basically alleges that the president committed obstruction of justice. He didn't. It's totally bogus. But I couldn't imagine walking to my boss's office, "Hey, I got an anonymous source, and it's about the president committing obstruction of justice." And he'd say, "Who is it?" "Oh, I can't tell you. And we can't put his name out there." "Okay, well, what do you got? How do you know?" "I got a document." "Do you have the document?" "No, he's going to read it to me on the phone." Well, evidently the friend didn't have it either. There's no way I'd get that story done. I'd have to have that approved ahead of time. And that's what I'm telling you about these 3 guys that they fired, that I think were forced to resign and they got a confidentiality agreement. The people who should go are the management people at CNN. They should be gone, all the way to the top, Jeff Zucker. Because the inmates do not run the asylum. The reporters don't tell the bosses, I'm going to do a story on this and you're going to like it or not, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Didn't happen. So then when it rains at CNN, it pours. Project Veritas just happens to dump their video out on undercover investigation. Producer admits network hyping mostly BS Trump-Russia scandal for the ratings. And we're talking, the producer is a guy by the name of John Banfield. He's a medical producer. And but listen, he's in on the meetings. He goes to the show meetings. He's in on the story production meetings. He tells the bosses of the shows, and he goes to the meetings where his reporter is going to be and pitch it. He hears all of what's going on. And that's why he said this, Banfield. He said, so I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to just keep digging. So they want to, he's basically saying, and he's in the meeting hearing that they're forcing people to follow a false narrative. And I've told you this a while ago, that this Trump collusion story, nothing, nada, nuka, zero. There's no collusion. Next month will be a year. And not a single shred of evidence that showed Donald Trump or anybody on his team was colluding with the Russians to rig the elections. That didn't happen, folks. Then when you hear the Obama former intelligence people and former security people, every one of them said, yeah, there's no evidence of collusion. And on top of that, and they have a single vote's been changed, by the Russian. Nope, not a single vote. No, not a single vote. This is the top intelligence, CIA, DIA, the NSA, the top intelligence people. Not a single vote was changed by the Russians. And Obama was told about this in August of 2016, according to the Washington Post, more anonymous sources. Anonymous sources, for this say that they had an eyes-only a package sent to the White House, and only Obama and his top people could open it up. This is in August of 2016. And, Obama was out in October of 2016 saying, oh, the Russians, they couldn't affect our election. Too decentralized. He's out on record. I've heard him say it. Too decentralized. No. So when they find out that the Russians do this, and, Donald Trump wins, it wasn't a problem until after Donald Trump wins. They thought Hillary was going to win. My question is, Obama didn't, what a dereliction of duty. So you knew this is a profound national security issue. The FBI was told about it. The CIA was told about it. Susan Rice, his national security, top national security person, was told about it. A lot of the top people were told about it. And when the only victim is the Democratic National Committee, whose servers supposedly, allegedly, were hacked. Of course, there's some contested stuff around that story. Seth Rich, who was an IT guy for the DNC, and that he may have done or somebody at the DNC may have released it because they were mad that Bernie Sanders was being cheated by the DNC and Hillary. There's also, a soft coup, a counter coup by the intelligence agencies, and consequently, we found out from WikiLeaks and Julian Assange that, the CIA has software that makes it look like the Russians did it, but I digress. So when they find out that the only victim is the DNC, and John Podesta, who supposedly was hacked, that's what he says. Other reports say he fell for a phishing scam, but anyway. So the only victim really is the DNC and the Democrats. And this is a profound national security issue. When it came time to get the servers from the DNC said no, told the FBI, no, sorry. Not going to. The Division of Homeland Security, nope, sorry, no. No, you're not going to see it. We're going to have a third party take a look at these servers for us. They didn't get a warrant. They didn't go and get those servers immediately because it was a profound national security issue. They didn't demand it under threat of imprisonment, of destroying evidence. They didn't demand it. They get a warrant. Outrageous. And so, as I've been telling you, there's no there, and the mainstream press knows it. And CNN knows it, and that was revealed. Here's another Project Veritas. Van Jones, who was a former Clintonite, Russia's a nothing burger. This is according to Project Veritas with H title, American Pravda, CNN Part 2. That's a Russian, bogus news organization, Pravda, which is pretty sad when CNN's being compared to Pravda, where they know they have a false narrative. They know it. The producers know it. Everybody knows that the Russian thing's a false narrative. Every piece of evidence for the last year points that there's no collusion. and it's a false narrative. And here is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who talks about these videos from Project Veritas, saying that, Sarah Sanders says that, CNN's fake news sparks epic meltdown from triggered reporter. One of the reporters in the White House briefing was like, well, you're bullying us, and, we're just trying to do our jobs. That's what the reporters are saying, right? You're just trying to do your jobs. So you're going to follow a false narrative, and two synapses aren't going to pop together after, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, almost a year, and, whoa, this is a false narrative. You're going to continue to follow a false narrative. That's doing your job. You're an idiot. Give me your press credentials. You're fired. And then you have the CNN people talking about protecting their sources. As I've told you, I couldn't do a story with an anonymous source. You shouldn't do stories with anonymous sources. And if an anonymous source gives you information, you should follow you to other sources who will go on record for protecting our sources. That's not journalism, folks. I can make up 100 anonymous sources. Oh, I've got, with one story about Donald Trump being under investigation, we had 5 anonymous sources. Well, if you really did have 5 anonymous sources, you got 5 felonies committed, and they're trying to make it look like, oh, we have legitimacy. We have 5. Well, how about 10? How about 20 anonymous sources? You can really legitimize it. It's not legitimate journalism when you're doing anonymous sources. Even Gannett, USA Today, the nation's propaganda newspaper, wouldn't allow anonymous sources. At least back in my day. You're not protecting your sources when they're anonymous sources. You're committing propaganda, character assassination. You're trying to destroy a duly elected president when you're putting out one anonymous source after another. And if they were so good, they'd come out front and center. And the bosses should make them come out front and center. They should say, no way you're going to do a story you trash the president where your source doesn't come out front and center. Oh, yeah, they're committing a felony. That's right. It's outrageous. Half the time, this CNN story where these 3 people, were forced to quit or resign, was another anonymous source. How did that get green-lighted? There's no way to back it up. Anonymous source, absolutely outrageous. Not a source. An anonymous source is not a true source. I'm sorry. Not. And then we have Sarah Huckabee Smith, who's taken over for Sean Spicer at the White House press corps, talking about, this is a disgrace, these media videos where that CNN behind the scenes is saying it's a nothing burger. We're doing it for ratings. There's no there. Disgrace to all of media, all of journalists. I think we have gone to a place where if the media can't be trusted to report the news, then there's a dangerous place for America. What I'm telling you. They are sitting in the White House press room. Well, we're doing our job. Well, we have to follow this story. You mean not following the Hillary Clinton and the private servers? She was supposed to maintain records. She didn't. That's a felony. She's I think, and I've said this before, and I think you could pretty well prove it. And I think the Clinton Cash books points to this as well. Private server to cover the fact she was taking treasonous bribes given in the form of donations to the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation, which part of that is being shut down. People stopped giving money to it because she can't give out favors. She basically monetized the office of the Secretary of State. A fifth of U.S. uranium production fell into Russian hands after 9 people donated $145 million in donations to the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, whatever you want to call it. And, this is a Uranium One deal that was laid out in the Clinton Cash book. And that's not a story